From fans actually believing that Queen Charlotte was black to cast members stoked about representation in period dramas, here's how Bridgerton changed the idea of racism on TV. You won't believe that people actually think that Queen Charlotte, the Queen Consort to King George III, is being called the first black Queen of England. And guess what? Now, thanks to the premiere of Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story, this idea is spreading like wildfire. This Bridgerton series is all about giving Queen Charlotte the spotlight she deserves. They portray her as a black teenager who gets into this interracial marriage with the mentally ill King George III, and it leads to something called the Great Experiment. Now hold up, because this Great Experiment is all about making people of color join British society, even the noble class. Sounds cool, right? Wrong. Now, we all know this didn't happen back in the 18th and 19th centuries. I mean, come on, it's pretty obvious that black people weren't widely accepted in British high society back then, and it might not be that different even now if you take Meghan Markle's royal family experience into account. But you know what's making this whole thing even more wild? Even though people know this Great Experiment stuff is pure fantasy, many still believe it's based on real events. And guess who's fueling that fire? Yep, Netflix and Shondaland. Now here's the thing, this show might seem harmless, but the messages it's sending about wealth, interracial relationships, representation are really strange. By sticking to the idea that Queen Charlotte was black, they're stirring up controversy and playing fast and loose with history. So this is a good time to remember. Sometimes fiction needs to stay in the world of make-believe, and history should be, well, history. Let me set things straight here. While Queen Charlotte and George didn't have this epic interracial love story, people back then couldn't stop gossiping about her looks. Some paintings portrayed her with fair skin and European features, while others hinted at slightly darker skin and African features. But hold up, people were pretty rude too, calling her plain and ugly. Not cool, right? In the show, they took these descriptions and turned them into a roller coaster of experiences for Charlotte. They show her facing racism and also forming strong bonds with other black people. King George III's mother even complains about Charlotte's very brown skin, and a minister spills the beans about her more blood. Drama alert. And here's the juicy part. Her own brother can't believe someone who looked like them could ever marry into the British royal family. Guests at her wedding lose their minds when they see her rocking her jewel-encrusted afro, and Lady Danbury's got that OMG expression of pure joy. But here's the kicker. Even though folks back then weren't shy about criticizing her appearance, there's barely any evidence that she had black parents, siblings, cousins, or ancestors on either side. So, Queen Charlotte might be a far cry from being black, but the show's diving headfirst into changing representation on TV. And let's be honest, it's not always hitting the mark. Watching Lady Danbury go through such tough and heartbreaking experiences is, well, not the kind of representation black fans were hoping for. Seriously, both of the characters who've been through such trauma in Netflix's Bridgerton universe are black. Not cool. For some black women out there, this whole series can feel like super heartbreaking. And here's the real issue with the Bridgerton universe. They just gloss over the actual slavery. The black characters here are all about living the posh life. They want to throw grand balls, join the high society hunts, and, well, marry into the white crowd without anyone giving them sassy remarks. Who can blame them? They just want to be treated like the royalty they already are. But behind all the glamour and parties, it's important to remember that race was a huge deal back then. And honestly, it should be treated like that. But it's not all doom and gloom here. Just take a look at this exciting scene from Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. Imagine it, Lady Danbury has fought her way to host the hottest ball in town. But when the party starts, it's very awkward, with white people on one side and black people on the other. But then, something magical happens. As Charlotte and George hit the dance floor, they break the ice, and suddenly, everyone's joining in on the dancing extravaganza. The sweet sound of Alicia Keys' "If I Ain't Got You" on the violin sets the perfect mood. The power of love and unity takes over, and people realize that skin color doesn't mean a thing when it comes to boogieing down together. Fast forward to after the ball, and George is in Charlotte's bedroom, all starry-eyed and amazed. And he knows that as long as he's got Charlotte by his side, there's no limit to what they can achieve together. It's a real power couple moment. Now, I know the show isn't all about history lessons, but these messages have a way of sticking with you, even if they're a bit over the top. Sure, we know this version of events didn't exactly happen, But it's like a nod to the idea that love and unity can conquer all, right? But let's get real for a sec. While the show might make it seem like interracial love solved everything, the truth is way more complicated. Back in the day, slave rebellions were on the rise, especially during the Georgian and Regency eras. Those brave uprisings had a massive impact on Britain's decision to end slavery in 1834. It wasn't all just about love conquering the world. It was about the strength of enslaved and colonized people that pushed for change. Now, here's a fun fact you might not know. The original Bridgerton novels didn't include black characters. The author, Julia Quinn, wanted to stick to happy tales, so she skipped the black characters and their complex stories. And you gotta admit, there's some questionable stuff on the show too, like Lady Danbury's story, which could have been handled much better. At the end of the day, Bridgerton gives us a swoon-worthy romance, but there's a lot more to the history and the story behind it. And the showrunner's decision to not to write about racism makes that even more noticeable. It's true that not everyone feels comfortable writing about experiences they can't relate to. And hey, that's okay, we're all different. But here's where things get tricky. Some writers have avoided writing black characters for the longest time, claiming they couldn't imagine them being happy. And then, out of the blue, they start making big bucks by showing bad representation of black people. Now, that's when eyebrows start to raise and people started questioning the moral side of things. You'd think that if Netflix and Shondaland wanted to show happy black characters in the Regency era, there are plenty of talented authors like Beverly Jenkins who could provide incredible stories. She's got those steamy, loving black romances set in the 17th to 20th centuries. That would be perfect for the screen. But for some reason, studios don't seem to be investing in those stories. And it's a huge bummer. The sad truth here is that sometimes Queen Charlotte's representation wasn't really about telling black stories or pushing for better representation. Nope, it was only a way to make black audiences happy with very little effort. But let's be real for a sec. Recasting a queen who lived during a time of British colonization as a black woman fighting for her people is just not it. It's a sneaky political statement that doesn't care about representation. This is a complex issue that requires a lot of thought. And even when Bridgerton doesn't tackle the idea of racism on TV the right way, it still makes a huge effort. It's pretty cool because it's one of the first times that a period drama is shining the spotlight on race. They're tackling social norms and stereotypes in their own way. One of the cast members, Arsma Thomas, who plays young Agatha Danbury, is super pumped about the way the show represents people of color. She's stoked that something like this finally exists, but also bummed that it's taken so long to happen. I mean, think about all those period dramas set in Italy or Russia where everyone's speaking in British accents. They're cool with bending reality there, but when it comes to race, it's like, whoa, hold up! But you know what? Even though Lady Danbury is a familiar character to Bridgerton fans, there's a whole new side of her in her younger version. You see, Agatha's stuck in a marriage with an older dude, feeling trapped and unsure if she can change her future. Other cast members, like Golda Rochevelle, who plays Queen Charlotte, are also thrilled to see someone like them in this fabulous period drama. And get this, India Amartifio, who stars as the young queen, is super excited about the success of Bridgerton. She's got mixed heritage, and before this show, period dramas weren't really her thing. She didn't see people like herself in those stories, so she didn't bother watching. But now, she's all about it. Shonda Rhimes is totally rocking the boat by breaking barriers and including people of color in genres where they've been missing. It's changing hearts and minds, and it's about time. So from cast members stoked about representation in period dramas to fans actually believing that Queen Charlotte was black, that's how Bridgerton changed the idea of racism on TV.